Let me tell you something real today. They never thought you'd wake up. They never imagined the day would come when their lies wouldn't work, when their charm wouldn't cut it, when your tears would dry up and you'd look in the mirror, not for them, but for you. See, the narcissists, they bank on your silence. They build castles out of your confusion. They grow stronger every time you second-guess your worth. But what they never calculated was your comeback. You walked away, not with rage, not with drama. He walked away with dignity, with power, with the kind of strength that doesn't need an audience. And oh, how that haunts them, because now you're not broken. You're not begging. You're not answering those messages at midnight. You're not defending your heart to someone who came to destroy it. Now you're thriving. You're smiling again. You're doing the work. You're healing in silence and glowing in public. And here's the twist they never saw coming. You didn't come for revenge. You didn't need to destroy them. You just decided to build yourself. And now, every step you take forward, every door you open, every moment you laugh like you mean it, that is the regret they carry like a shadow, because they thought you'd be broken forever. They thought you'd stay small, but you became something they never believed in. Oh, so don't look back. Don't explain. Don't shrink. You already won. And the price of underestimating you, they'll pay that. Every single day. Narcissists thrive on control. Their entire psychological game is built on the idea that they are the center of your emotional universe. They feed off your reactions, your anger, your confusion, your tears, and your efforts to please them. When you respond, they feel in control. When you argue, defend yourself, or try to explain your pain, they feel powerful. Because that's exactly what they want, a reaction. They push your buttons, knowing exactly what to say and when to say it, just to keep you emotionally invested. They don't want love. They want domination disguised as affection. So when you finally decide to walk away, not in a rage, not in a storm of broken plates and screaming, but with quiet dignity and emotional clarity, it shatters their illusion of control in the most profound way. They never expect calm detachment. Narcissists expect chaos. They expect you to fall apart when they discard you or when you finally realize who they are. They expect you to beg, to plead, to try and reason with them. They count on it. That's how they reaffirm their self-importance. But when you don't give them the drama they've been feeding on, when you don't collapse under the weight of their manipulation, you flip the script. Walking away with dignity is not just a physical act. It is an emotional revolution. It is choosing your peace over their approval. It is the moment when you stop being their supply and start becoming your own anchor. No yelling. No last words. No, let me just explain. Just silence. Just space. Just a door closing softly, and a chapter ending on your terms. This act is powerful because narcissists cannot handle emotional indifference. You see, love doesn't destroy a narcissist. Indifference does. When you react, even in pain, you still signal that they matter. When you don't react at all, when you walk away with your back straight, head high, and no need to look over your shoulder, it destroys their fantasy. Their illusion that they are irreplaceable crumbles, because for them the game was never about love, it was about superiority. But now you're out of the game, and they can't stand being irrelevant. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them a chance to fix what they broke 100 times. What you owe yourself is freedom. And when you give yourself that freedom by leaving without drama, you make a statement louder than any argument could deliver. You show them, and more importantly, you show yourself, that your peace is not up for negotiation. That's what they never anticipated. They never prepared for the version of you that would be okay without them. They thought they were the source of your strength, but they were only ever the source of your suffering. And long after you're gone, long after you stop checking your phone, long after the silence becomes your sanctuary, they'll remember. Because someone who walks away with dignity doesn't just leave, they haunt. Not because they say anything, but because they say nothing. Because you left no door open for them to slither back through. You left with grace, and that grace becomes the echo in their hollow world. They will regret losing someone who didn't scream, didn't fight, didn't crumble, someone who just walked away, strong, whole, and done. A narcissist builds their world on the belief that they are superior, more powerful, and more desirable than anyone else. They create illusions of dominance by tearing others down, especially those close to them. When they see you broken, vulnerable, or emotionally drained, it fuels their ego. They convince themselves that you need them to survive, that without their presence you'll fall apart. That belief is their safety net. They assume once they've hurt you, manipulated you, and drained your energy, you'll stay stuck in that pain, forever emotionally tethered to the chaos they created. What they never see coming is your healing, and more importantly, your transformation. Healing is something a narcissist doesn't understand, because they never truly do it themselves. They expect wounds to fester, not to close. They think once they've damaged you, that damage will define you. But when you start doing the hard work, when you start confronting the pain, digging into the trauma, facing the truth of what they did, you begin to break free from their psychological grip. Healing isn't instant. It's messy. It hurts. It brings tears at midnight and quiet battles during the day. But each time you choose to take another step away from the person you are under their control, you begin to reclaim pieces of yourself. And that reclamation is terrifying to them. They thought you'd always be the version of yourself they molded, anxious, unsure, desperate for their attention. They never imagined you'd rise from that darkness, with clarity in your eyes and strength in your spirit. They thought your identity was wrapped around theirs, that your glow came from their presence. But when you heal, you begin to realize they weren't the light, they were the shadow. They dimmed your fire so they could feel bigger, and now you're lighting it again, without their permission. As you grow, something beautiful happens. You begin to shine in ways they never allowed. You look better, you feel better, you start to attract healthy energy, surround yourself with people who see your worth, and create a life that reflects your value, not your wounds. You become the version of yourself they tried to suppress, and that is a direct threat to everything they believed about you. You're no longer chasing them. You're no longer seeking their validation. You're not checking your phone for their apology. You're not hoping for closure from someone who only ever gave you confusion. You gave that closure to yourself. Through growth, through reflection, through rebuilding your self-worth from the ground up. The glow-up isn't just physical, though sometimes it is. It's emotional. Spiritual. It's the way you carry yourself now, the calm in your voice, the strength in your boundaries, the peace in your silence. All of this shows that their power was never real, only borrowed, And now that you've taken it back, they're left watching you become everything they never wanted you to be. Free, fulfilled, and out of their reach. The regret they feel isn't because they lost someone. It's because they realize you never needed them. And your glow becomes the mirror they can't avoid, reflecting their emptiness and your resilience. Narcissists survive on a steady supply of attention, admiration, and emotional reaction. It's not love they're looking for. It's control. They feed off your highs and lows, your anger and forgiveness, your tears and your laughter, when it revolves around them. As long as you're emotionally engaged, whether you're praising them or confronting them, you're still under their influence. They thrive in chaos, especially the chaos they create. That's why one of the most powerful things you can ever do to a narcissist, something they never expect, is to go completely silent. Not just quiet in voice, but quiet in presence, in energy, in availability. This is where the no contact or gray rock method comes in, and it's devastating to their carefully crafted power structure. Going no contact means cutting all ties. No phone calls, no text messages, no checking up on their social media, no answering their late-night attempts to check in. It means removing yourself from the emotional battlefield. It's not about hate. It's not about revenge. It's about peace. When you decide that your sanity is more important than their drama, you break the invisible chain they've kept around your mind, and they don't expect that. They expect a fight. They expect you to hold on, to cling to the hope of change, to stay emotionally invested long after they've discarded you. Silence terrifies them because it tells them they've lost their grip, and, more importantly, it tells them you've started to heal. The gray rock method is similar, but it's often used when you can't go fully no contact. Maybe because of shared responsibilities, children, or a work relationship. It means becoming emotionally flat, uninteresting, unengaged. You give them nothing. You don't react. You don't argue. You don't try to explain your feelings anymore. You become like a gray rock, dull, unresponsive, neutral. This doesn't mean you're weak. In fact, it requires incredible strength and self-discipline. Because narcissists are masters of provocation. They'll test you. They'll poke at your wounds, try to guilt-trip you, love-bomb you, or bait you into reacting just so they can re-enter your emotional space. But when you respond with nothing, no heat, no tears, no validation, they start to panic. The silence becomes louder than any words. They can't manipulate what doesn't respond. They can't twist what doesn't engage. Your lack of reaction becomes the mirror that shows them they're no longer in control. And for someone who believes they are the center of everyone's universe, that is a brutal realization. They didn't expect you to withdraw your energy. They didn't expect you to treat them with indifference. They thought they would always have access to you, that your emotions would always be available for them to toy with. What truly drives them to regret is the slow realization that you're no longer emotionally affected by them, that you've detached, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. That they're just another person now, not a god, not a savior, not a source of validation, just someone you used to know. That shift in power is something they never prepared for. It doesn't just bruise their ego. It fractures it, because narcissists don't see people as equals. They see them as tools. And when you become unusable to them, not because you're broken, but because you've healed, they're left with nothing. No supply, no audience, no control, just silence. And in that silence, they sit alone with their own emptiness. The narcissist lives for their image. Everything they do is crafted to maintain a certain mask. Charming, successful, caring, confident, whatever version gets them admiration and keeps others under their illusion. This image is sacred to them, not because it reflects who they truly are, but because it hides who they truly are. Underneath that polished exterior is insecurity, manipulation, emotional immaturity, and a deep fear of being exposed. They count on the fact that most people won't see it, or if they do, they won't say anything. They manipulate in the shadows, gaslight in whispers, and twist reality so that their victims doubt their own perceptions. That's why one of the most shocking and damaging things you can do to a narcissist is to speak the truth out loud, clearly, calmly, and without fear. They don't expect you to ever gather the strength to name what they've done. They believe they've blurred the lines so well that you'll stay trapped in confusion or too scared to confront them. And many people do stay silent, not because they're weak, but because narcissists often condition their victims to doubt themselves. But when you begin to step out of that fog, and you begin to see things as they really are, something shifts. You find your voice. And when you use that voice to name the abuse, whether it's in private conversation, in a therapy session, or even publicly, you threaten the one thing they protect above all else, their false identity. Calling out a narcissist doesn't mean screaming or pointing fingers. In fact, the most powerful truth is often delivered quietly. It's the calm, direct statement that refuses to back down. It's the moment you say, "That's not okay," or "That's not love," or "I see what you're doing." It's refusing to pretend that their toxic behavior is normal. It's when you stop covering for them, stop explaining away their behavior to others, stop playing along. It's when you say to yourself and maybe to others, "This is emotional abuse. This is manipulation. This is gaslighting." And if you ever speak that truth publicly, not to shame, not to retaliate, but to protect your peace or help others, the narcissist feels a different kind of fear, the fear of exposure, because they depend on people not seeing behind the curtain. The moment someone starts telling the truth, their web of lies begins to unravel. They panic not because the truth is exaggerated, but because the truth is accurate. They'll try to discredit you, play the victim, twist the narrative. But they're afraid, because deep down they know you're right. And once one person speaks the truth, others might begin to question things too. Their control starts to weaken, and their carefully built mask begins to crack. This act of truth-telling is not just about them, it's about you. It's a moment of reclaiming your voice, your reality, and your dignity. It's about no longer living in their distorted version of the world. And while it might make them furious or desperate to regain control, what really eats at them is the fact that you are no longer afraid of them, that you saw through the charm, the gaslighting, the emotional games, and chose honesty over illusion. That kind of clarity cannot be reversed. And no matter how much they try to repair their image, they'll always remember the one who didn't just walk away, but told the truth on the way out. A narcissist expects you to seek revenge. They expect bitterness, anger, obsession, and a need to prove them wrong. They anticipate that you'll be consumed by what they did to you, unable to move forward, trapped in pain and fueled by the desire to make them feel what they made you feel. This is what their mind is prepared for, a cycle of emotional warfare that keeps you bound to them, even after the relationship is over. That's why the most powerful and unexpected response is not revenge at all. It's rising without a trace of hatred. It's choosing joy over justification. It's thriving without even thinking about payback. That is the kind of growth they cannot comprehend or compete with. Narcissists feed off of emotional energy. Love, hate, admiration, rage. As long as the focus is still on them, they feel important. They don't care if your obsession with them is negative. To them, attention is attention, and attention means power. So when you let go, not just physically but emotionally, it robs them of everything they depend on. When you no longer need them to hurt, like you did, when you stop hoping they'll wake up and realize what they lost, when you genuinely release them and focus entirely on your own healing and success, they begin to feel something they're not used to feeling: irrelevant. They believed you would stay stuck in the loop, that you'd be driven by the need to get even, to prove your worth, to remind them of who you were. But instead, you chose to rebuild yourself from the inside out. You went quiet. You took the pain, the confusion, the betrayal, and you used it as fuel to become someone they no longer recognize. You stopped asking why. You stopped explaining your side of the story. You stopped participating in the narrative they tried to control. You started living fully, deeply, and unapologetically, not to make them regret, but because you finally understood your own value. And here's what hits them hardest: they can't take credit for who you become. When you thrive after a narcissistic relationship, it's not because of them, it's in spite of them. That's the wound to their ego they cannot heal. They expected to be the center of your story forever, but your glow, your growth, your peace, none of it includes them anymore. You don't need them to fall to rise. You rise because you chose yourself, and that, more than any insult or confrontation, is what truly hurts them. The life you build after the narcissist is not meant to be proof to them that you won. It's simply a reflection of the freedom you claimed when you finally let go. You surround yourself with healthy relationships, new experiences, meaningful goals. You laugh again, not to make them jealous, but because your spirit has made space for joy again. You love again, not to replace them, but because you've learned what real love should feel like. You no longer operate from a place of pain. You operate from a place of power. That's what they never expected. That's what they regret. Not because they love you. They don't know how to love, but because they lost access to someone who transformed pain into strength without needing revenge to do it. They thought they'd haunt you forever, but you found peace. They thought you'd live in the shadow of their rejection, but you stepped into your own light. You didn't just move on. You elevated, and that elevation, that peace, that silent strength, that's what echoes in their mind long after you've stopped thinking about them. Narcissists operate with a deep belief that they are superior, more desirable, and more irreplaceable than anyone else in your life. They see themselves as the pinnacle of your romantic experiences, convinced that you will never find anyone better than them. That's the fantasy they feed on. The idea that you will always compare every future relationship to the one you had with them, and that no one will ever measure up. They thrive on the thought that they were the best you could ever get, no matter how poorly they treated you. So when you find real love after them, when you enter a healthy, mutual, emotionally mature relationship that brings out the best in you, it's a reality that hits them like nothing else. Real love doesn't look anything like what the narcissist offered. There are no power games, no emotional roller coasters, no love bombing followed by silent treatment. In a healthy relationship, there is respect, kindness, consistency, and support. You are seen, heard, valued, not used, not manipulated, not drained. And when someone else comes into your life and treats you this way, you begin to understand just how toxic and abnormal the narcissist's behavior really was. You look back and realize you weren't crazy or too sensitive. You were just never truly loved, only controlled. The narcissist never expected you to outgrow them, emotionally or romantically. They believed they set the standard. But real love exposes them. It shows you what love actually feels like, and it reveals the lie you were living before. There's no bigger threat to a narcissist than someone who sees the truth and lives a better life without them. It challenges everything they believed about their importance. It proves they weren't a blessing, they were a burden. And even worse for them, your new partner sees your worth without needing to be manipulated or impressed. That new love doesn't need to be convinced of your value. They just honor it, naturally and consistently. And when the narcissist watches you from afar, or hears through mutual connections that you've moved on and found someone better, the regret begins to seep in. Not because they love you or feel remorse in the way a healthy person would, but because they hate being replaced. They hate the idea that someone else can make you smile, protect your heart, and be everything they pretended to be but never were. Your joy, your peace, your healthy relationship becomes undeniable proof that they were never the one. They were the mistake you learned from. Your glow becomes brighter when you're loved the right way. You become calmer, more confident, more grounded. You speak differently. You move differently. There's no longer tension in your voice or fear in your decisions. You are no longer walking on emotional eggshells. Instead, you are walking in freedom, in wholeness, in love that lifts instead of drains. And that version of you, thriving, loved, and no longer looking back, is what haunts the narcissist the most. They never thought they'd be forgotten. They never imagined they'd be replaced. And they certainly never believed you'd be genuinely happier with someone else. But now, someone holds your heart the way they never could. Someone protects your peace instead of disturbing it. And in their silent moments, they realize you didn't just move on, you moved up. And in doing so, you proved that their biggest fear was true all along. They were never irreplaceable. They were just a chapter, and someone better wrote the rest of the story. So now you see, the very things they never thought you'd do are the things that broke their illusion and shattered their control. You healed. You went silent. You told the truth. You let go of revenge. You found real love. You became the version of yourself they tried so hard to prevent, and that is their deepest regret. Not just losing you, but watching you rise in a life where they no longer exist. You didn't just survive the narcissist. You outgrew them, and now, without a word, without a fight, without ever needing to look back, your very existence becomes the justice they never saw coming.